A friend of mine, who's also a Presbyterian pastor, told me a story recently. It was a story about a recent church, a previous church she had served as an associate pastor. In her first month there as associate pastor, she was very excited because they were getting back to doing their midweek meals, similar like we have every week here. And she thought this is going to be a great time and place for meeting people, for hearing them, for introducing herself. She was so excited for that first week. And so she got there a little bit early, went into the dining hall. And first, as she came in, she was a little bit surprised that no one greeted her at the door. She thought someone surely would be greeting people coming in, but she thought, well, maybe I'm here a little bit early. Maybe just everyone knows each other. So she went in and she saw right away a table close to the door. There was a couple seats open. So she was very excited. She saw the faces. She pulled out a chair. She was about to sit down when the people sitting at this table said to her, "Oh, I'm sorry. These seats, they're reserved for our friends who are coming later." So she thought this was a little strange, but she moved the seat back in and she thought, well, maybe this is a group that hasn't seen each other in a long time. Maybe this time together really means something. So she went to the next table. At the next table, she pulled out the chair again. She was just about to sit down. And again, a person at the table spoke up and said, No, they're saved for Mary and Tom. I'm sorry, you can't sit here. So she again pushed the table back. She went to a third table. And the third time, she pulled the seat out and was just about to sit down. And again, people said, no, we always sit with the same people and they're coming. So again, I'm sorry, you can't sit here. Finally, she found a table that was empty and sat down there on her own. And as she sat there, she was first confused. She didn't remember any sign up ahead of time for reserving seats at this midweek meal, but she was also hurt. She was so excited this week to go out and meet people and introduce herself and get to know them. But as she did so, she didn't seem to think that they wanted that they really wanted her to get to know them or meet. She thought all of what she was coming to do to build these relationships, she didn't know if that was really welcomed. Not just there on Wednesday nights, but maybe in the weeks or months to come. She also wondered if this is how she, as a pastor of this church, was welcomed at meals. How is it for others who are coming in for the first time? How is it for a new worshiper who's coming in and someone says, I'm sorry, you can't sit next to me. This is for someone else. How is it for someone who's hoping to come and find community at that meal and comes in nervous, unsure, maybe even hurt by church in the past and having to sit by themselves? How is it for someone who comes from a different background, maybe doesn't wear the same clothes as everyone else, doesn't have the same skin color as the predominant group in that church, maybe doesn't speak or act the same way as they come in and are told, I'm sorry, it's only for Mary and Tom here at this table. She also wondered, how is it for maybe a parent of the young children coming in already full and stressed out and busy, hoping not just for welcome, but maybe a little bit of help during the meal, a little bit of chance for them to relax and simply talk to other adults. They're told, I'm sorry, no, the children and families, you all are over on this side. She wondered what that felt like for others and not just herself. And I think there's a reason now that that's her former church and not current church she's serving at. For us, when we think about all of our church ministry, maybe meals and sharing a table, maybe that's not the top thing that comes to mind. Maybe it is. But for Jesus, mealtime was incredibly important. It was incredibly holy and valuable. Go back and read through the Gospels, not just Luke, but any of the Gospels, and you'll notice so many of Jesus' teachings and miracles and times of welcoming those that others didn't want Jesus to welcome all happened around a table. Now, maybe part of it is that Jesus really loved eating and drinking and having fellowship around tables like we do today. But as well, I believe Jesus knew something about mealtime, about sharing tables. He knew that sitting at a table, sharing a meal with others was a holy moment. That's a time where when you are actually at that table, you can feel like you are fully welcomed and loved and mattered, where you can get to know people in ways that you just can't outside of that time, and where you get a taste of pure joy and peace and belonging, especially belonging, like I am part of something and some community. Jesus knew how holy that moment was, that Jesus risked a lot of his own reputation and safety to welcome those who weren't always welcomed at tables. You go through often at the tables, Jesus is welcoming people like Zacchaeus and tax collectors, and prostitutes. Jesus is welcoming people who are from other faiths or maybe don't dress right, or people who often wouldn't be welcomed at tables. Jesus welcomes the woman who anoints his head or his feet with oil, even as others say, well, you don't know her history. Jesus says, what she has done and who she is will always be told when my story is told. Again and again, Jesus finds welcoming at a table to be a great way of showing his love, his grace, and his peace. It's no mistake that the last thing Jesus wanted to do before his death was to share a table with his disciples. It was to meet over a meal, breaking bread and cup, sharing laughter and stories, showing his love that way. And I always find it fascinating, too, that who was there at that table was the disciples, but it was all of the disciples. Even those who, if we knew what Jesus knew, we might not have invited or wanted to share a table with ourselves. Because at that table was Thomas, the doubter, Peter, the denier, even Judas, the betrayer. All of these people, we might think, well, do you truly belong here? Jesus said, I want to share this last meal with you and show to you that my love, my grace, my presence will always be with you. These meal times are holy. And I bet they're holy for you too. I want you to think really quickly about some of your favorite moments in the past few years you've had with friends or family or church members or friends. Maybe they're doing things like hikes or concerts or something. I bet a lot of those moments are at a table. Maybe they're at a table at a holiday meal. Maybe they're going over to a friend's house and sharing a meal that they've made special for you. Maybe it's family gatherings over the holidays, and after a long day at the beach or hiking in the mountains, you come back for a meal. Everything just seems to be at peace. Or maybe it's going out to a restaurant with friends and breaking bread and sharing drinks, and knowing this is such a great joy, especially after 2 years of COVID. But those meals and gathering around a table is truly a gift, truly a joy. And for Jesus, he invites us to think about how holy those moments are for ourselves, but also to consider who isn't always welcomed at those tables. Who is it that sometimes are left out? In Jesus' day, that included people he lists off here: the poor, the lame, the blind, people who are of other backgrounds or regions or faith backgrounds. Those were people Jesus welcomed. Those people who said, well, you don't know their history or past. They're not like you or me. Don't welcome them to the table. Jesus said, no, come. Most of all, I want you here. For us today, we might think as well, who are the people that aren't always welcomed? Maybe in our homes or neighborhoods or churches or our tables. Who are those in our schools who sit by themselves? Who are those, as they come into our churches, maybe are a little bit worried or scared about what others think, so that they go by themselves? And Jesus invites us to consider what we could do differently. What we could do differently than the regular patterns of this world. And Jesus invites us to do two things differently. First, he says, when you host a meal, don't just host those who already know that you love them and welcome them, your friends and family and neighbors, those who are very easy to welcome. He says, go and welcome those who maybe you don't know yet. Maybe that new family down the street who doesn't know anyone. Maybe those who haven't quite fit in the community. Go out and invite them and welcome them. I know here in our church, we have so many people who have now come and been a part of our church family simply because the Claytons, Pat and Judy, go out for walks every week at the Chesterfield Mall, and they bump into people, and they always say to whoever they bump into, come and join us for midweek meals. How many people have known welcome and love and connection to God simply because Pat and Judy have said, we have some food and we'd like to invite you to our table. Jesus also says, along with inviting people to our tables, actually, that we should change up how we are as guests. When we come in as guests to table, don't just go where we might immediately go, where I would immediately choose to go. And that is go with people we already know, people we're comfortable with, people who are like us. Instead, Jesus says, well, maybe go to those seats that others avoid. Maybe go to those tables where it's just one or two new people who might be different or you're not quite sure of. Go sit with them and say to them, hi, I'm Alex. I'm so glad you're here. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Jesus invites us to take that risk, that dare, that step of doing it. I know that doesn't come naturally to me. I know when I go somewhere, I like to get to know the people and sit at the same table. It's nice and safe. I think even a month ago, a few of us were at Montreat with our high school youth, and every day I would sit at our table, which was nice and safe for me. But I know one of our youth, Spencer Jackson, every single meal would find a different table with a different church to sit at and say hello and get to know. And I sometimes think that our youth can teach us a lot about how to truly live out the gospel. I know for myself, I want to close with a quick story. I know for myself, I've known the opposite of my friend and her story in her church. And I especially remember a moment many years ago, more years than I'd like to admit, my freshman year of college. I just moved into the dorm, and right across the street from our dorm was a Presbyterian church, Kent Presbyterian Church at Kent State University. And I knew it was there, and I knew a big part of what I wanted to do over these 4 years was to create community, and especially my faith community. Faith and relationship with God was really important. But I didn't know anyone there yet. So it took a couple weeks, and finally I got up the courage enough to go. I knew they had a Wednesday night meal and then a time for the college students afterwards. And so I got up the courage, and I very shyly walked on over and went to the door, unsure of what to expect. I got there right around 6 as the meal began, and a lot of the college students, we were in college time, hadn't come in yet. So I was a little bit worried as I came in, but right away, someone at the door welcomed me, gave me a name tag so I didn't have to repeat my name to every single person, which was really nice. And then immediately got one college student who was there, and then a family of the church who was there. And they said, this is Alex. He's a freshman, and he would love to sit with you. And they welcomed me to their table. And as I sat there, a couple more college students came to sit. But what really mattered was that members across generations of this church that night and in the weeks to come sat next to me as well. And they welcomed me. It was older members. It was members with families. They'd come and sit. And within a few weeks, they'd get to know me. And by that spring, as I was coming, I wasn't shy or scared or nervous anymore. But pretty soon I was up there too, welcoming people, saying to them, this is my church. We're so excited to have you here. Friends, know what a gift it is to break bread and share a meal. Know that every time we do so, Christ is present, pouring out love and grace. May we be guided by Christ's words this day to show welcome and love and hospitality in new and radical ways. Amen.